Before we get too far down the line, if you don't mind me asking some questions about the Shark Tank episode, I'm so
Please.
curious. So obviously I've watched the episode. What I love is that I think the reason why you guys are one of the most well-recognized brands from the show is because Barbara, as you know, references it quite a bit as she's trying to woo another person
Yeah.
on. It's like, well, she goes, my boys from Cousins,
Yeah.
and I franchised them. So she
Yeah.
likes to reference that a lot. What was it like, first of all, going on the show, especially since you guys had only been in business for a short time?
Yeah. I mean, great question. So as I mentioned, they reached out to us and that was our first night. And over the next few weeks in early 2012, we actually said no to them to Shark Tank twice. And people are like, what? You said no to going on the show. And the reason is because, we were in our infancy. You just referenced it. We didn't have any historical sales, beyond 2 months when we went on the show, 2.5 months. We didn't want to give out our idea.
Right.
There were a lot of different things. And then eventually the executive producer called and said, if you guys don't do this, you're going to be making the biggest mistake of your life. So we did it. We were shooting it in July of 2012, and it aired in October of 2012. And it was a phenomenal experience because it's in large part, a phenomenal platform to share your business idea, to get mentorship or partners like a Barbara, who's been just the best. And it opens up new doors and opportunities to you that we would have never had the money or the means to do. Like we wouldn't have been able to go out there and pitch on a major network that we're franchising, right? We don't have enough
Sure.
millions of dollars to do that at the time. So can't say enough great things about Shark Tank, their team, and of course Barbara. But the show itself was, I always say, it is as real of a reality show as you'll see. Like we've done a bunch of TV since, and you can see some of the things are reality, and they stop and they cut and they edit and they kind of
Sure.
make it how they like. Shark Tank was kind of, if you're watching, you're watching what we're going through. I mean, you start behind those doors, you walk up, take your space on the dot, and you're only 25 feet from these pretty, big figures, whether that be billionaires like Cuban or just successful entrepreneurs in the sharks themselves that have built huge businesses. So it almost kind of freezes you for a second. And then out of the back behind 30 some odd cameras, they go. And so you start,
Go.
you start, you start your pitch, that first minute and a half pitch of what your business is, what you're looking for an investment, equity. And then after that, it's truly just Q&A, right? It's when you see that firing back and forth, that's very real. They speak over each other. They try to get you off their game. And I think it's actually really pretty interesting because, you can see at times where Mark's like, you guys aren't answering my question. Like we were answering it, but
Right.
someone else, gets cut off. And we just try to go in with this calm, level-headed demeanor, not too high, not too low, so that they wouldn't be able to get that emotion out of us, good or bad. And Barb told us after, the producers were in her ear going, you got to get these guys to do something. You got to get them to show something that's going to create either TV or controversy. And we
Right.
just stayed like level-headed. And I think the way that we did that and the key to our success at the time was, we always say if you're prepared, you've got nothing to worry about. And so we prepared for that show like we would the biggest interview, test, anything in life that you are going after. We watched every single show that was available to us. We took notes on the little 3x5 index cards like you're in middle school, right? Questions on one side, answers on the others. We researched every shark to what they did as, high school employees. Damon worked at Red Lobster. We knew that going in.
Right.
And then, of course, we researched all the sharks to say, hey, what are they going to ask? What do they want to know? And just the basics of knowing our business. While it was only 2.5 months old, everything from numbers to figures to goals, like we had to have down in our minds such that we already knew our answer as they were asking the question. And I think that allowed us to kind of cruise right here in terms of emotion, to not get too high, too low. As I said, we would go on runs in LA and we would be doing our pitch back and forth, but we're sweating and there's fire trucks and police in the background, just that commotion of a city. We would pitch each other in the mirror. Saban would speak, I'd speak. We'd hit each other with pillows or books or whatever, just to try and take that person off their game. And if we could kind of work through that, then we figured, hopefully we'd be able to do the same in front of the Sharks.
Wow, that's brilliant prep, Jim. I mean, and it showed because I've watched obviously saw the episode. I watched it again before our show to kind of bring myself back up to speed. And I just love how, yeah, all the info, all the questions, I mean, your answers were rolling off of your tongue, like that. And you guys had, all of the answers. Of course, they rolled their eyes because you'd only been in
Oh
business
yeah.
for 2 months, as you remember. But, Barbara just sat back there. She was quiet for the longest time. She just kind of waited till all the dust settled.
Yeah, yeah. And even that's like, we got an offer from Hersheyvec, for
Right.
asking for more equity and more money. But it was, at that point I kind of said, as nice as I could put it, well, hey, if you join the team, what might you be able to do? And he's kind of
Yep.
like, you're down there. I'm right here. I don't need to tell you. Barbara's like, I'll answer that question. I'd do X, Y, and Z. I'd sink my teeth into this. And so that just even, the lights went off again, being like, this could be a great partner for us.
That's awesome. So life after Shark Tank then. So you go back, obviously, you get the deal done eventually, and you're still running the food truck before you franchise for like, about a year and a half, right?
Yep, correct.
And at that point, and then you start having this idea where Barbara, suggests franchising the concept. Kind of walk me through that now. So when you go ahead to franchise the company, is the idea at that point you're going to start opening regionally, or you're going to start go nationwide right away because of the contact with Barbara and the exposure from the show? Like, what was the strategic approach for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, I don't know how much strategy was in it, and I think that's kind of one of the beauties of our story is that the drive, the work ethic, the desire, the kind of wanting a new challenge and wanting to grow a business. I don't know as though there's any perfect recipe or formula as to how to do it. I know there are plenty of franchisors that will target, as your point, regions or areas and how to expand from there. For us, we kind of thought, hey, we originally thought that these trucks would work in warm weather climates, because they have more service throughout the whole season or the whole year.
Sure.
We thought you kind of wanted a higher disposable income, right? Because lobster is expensive. What we've found 12 years later, and of course, 2, 3, 4 years into it, that this really works everywhere and anywhere. And there's actually even more brilliant pieces to it in the sense of, which I could get into later, of that it actually works in markets that I think a lot of storefronts don't. But ultimately, we said, hey, again, we kind of did this on a whim. I moved out there. I quit my job. I'm like, what am I doing when I hit the send button? Emailing my owners, who I really adored, and the job too. 2 guys with 1 food truck, it might not be the living that you need to make to survive, never mind in LA, just in a lot of places.
Right.
I always say, I'm like, it probably wasn't the sexiest thing to be telling my, at the time, girlfriend and my future in-laws, like, yeah, I have a food truck. It's not the best story, but it evolved. And we just kind of looked at it at the time. It was just, we were younger, we were single, and we just worked. And we worked and kind of waited for the next thing. And when opportunities came, we'd assess them and vet them. And so when the franchising idea came from Barbara, we said, well, yeah, we can scale this. We're going to need to learn how to do it, how to make sure that the reputation and integrity of the business is upheld with a franchisee, no matter what market we go into. I think when Shark Tank showed that we were franchising, we got thousands of requests. And those are from all over the country, to your point. So did I sit there and go, no, we don't want to go in New York yet, or we don't want to go here? No, we were ultimately looking for the best people in great markets. It sounds really simple, but it's really hard to find. You can find a great market and not a great entrepreneur, not a good owner, not a good leader, not someone who's not coachable. So it doesn't work, right. And vice versa. So we sold 10 out of the gate from those 2,000 plus requests. And this was in late 2014. And we did that to say, hey, we could have sold 100. But we knew that we didn't know enough at the time. Like, we had, some smarts to say, hey, we may not be franchisor experts, but we know that it probably would be a detriment to the brand if we just went out and sold 100, because so many would close because we don't have the infrastructure or the support, or this person may not be a great franchisee. So it's an issue if you're in an abutting territory where it takes away from the brand. So we sold 10 and said, let's try and learn who these people are, what their profiles are, what makes them successful or not, where are our misses. And we learned a lot from that to say, we thought this person would be great. They weren't for these reasons. Now, next time we go and find more franchisees, we know what we're looking for. Just like anything in life, the more repetition and kind of experiences you have, the better you are to kind of refine that focus, look, search for such franchisees. So, we were all over with our openings in the sense of Phoenix or Texas or Midwest and Northeast. And what we later came to learn when we were a little concerned of saying, how would it work where it rains a lot or snows in the winter or it gets cold?
Right.
It worked just as well, if not better, because people in Boston and New York and New Jersey or the Midwest, they get what it's like to put a scarf on, a pea coat, and go outside and get their food. In California, it could sprinkle rain and you kind of lose some business. So there's just those ebbs and flows and fluctuating business, but really it sustains for each truck. And now we've really found too, in the last 7 or 8 years, that we've got the ability to go into, I'll call them like elbow regions or smaller markets that are starving for great lobster, don't have any lobster, don't have quality or nothing at all. And so we can go in there with a food truck and move around, and we don't need this massive city to support those own, a restaurant of 4 walls, for example.
That's brilliant. First of all, I agree with the expansion approach, because in your case, you guys had to be first to market because you had the platform of the show leading into it. So if you would have opened up regionally, you would have faced a lot more competition when you would have expanded out nationwide. So I think that made a lot of sense. Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.